Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast, episode number 43. My name is Phil and joining me as always is Rohan. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. And joining us today, also from Australia, is James. Hey James.
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Good, thank you. So James, some people may know you as jimpower on the forums. They also may recognize you from your Lovelace UI, which has just been added to the Home Assistant demo pages now that Lovelace is the default UI. So thanks for all your awesome work on Lovelace that you've done and sharing it with everyone. We're going to pick your brains about that in a minute.
Excellent.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily connect to Google and Amazon voice assistants for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. Configurations via the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, dynamic DNS, or any YAML.
Remember last week, Rohan, we said we weren't going to make this a thing?
I know. So if you haven't heard, Lowe's is shutting down their platform called Iris. I guess it's called Iris by Lowe's. If you're not familiar with Lowe's, it's a North American home improvement store. So they basically started their own little home automation hub with which is called Iris. Yeah, so they decided as of March 31st, 2019, which is I guess 2 months now from when we're recording, it's shutting down. So basically, yeah, all the cloud services are going to be going offline, and yeah. So
I think, once again, this is, like the whole, avoid the cloud, yada, yada, yada sort of stuff. The good thing about with this Iris shutdown is they're creating an open source platform that they're going to call Arcus, Arcus. And they basically said, look, Iris wants the smart home enthusiast and developer communities to be able to benefit from the hard work and development of this platform. So you're not, completely out of luck. So hopefully we'll see, by the end of March, there'll be an Arcus platform added to Home Assistant to keep those smart devices working. But it does just go to show, I'm actually evaluating now, a couple of potential blind controllers, and I'm looking at the cloud dependency, and I'm like, if that company just shuts down, then I'm going to, have no access to this device anymore. So
yeah,
I don't want 2019 to be the year of everything shutting down, but it seems to be the way it's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. So this is our third episode, and we've had 3 conversations in a row about cloud services just taking products offline and things. But I will say, you know what? When I first read this article, I hadn't found out about the Arcus project and the fact that they want to open source it. So I will say, as annoying as this is, kudos to Lowe's for saying, hey, you know what? We made this product. People benefited from it for a little bit. Now we're taking it offline, and here's how you continue to benefit from this platform, right? So, to me, that's a big. It's not. I mean, it still sucks that they have to take it down, but it's great that they're saying, hey, you know what? We want people to continue using this. At the end of the day, it is still an inconvenience. It is still disruptive, but what do you do?
Yeah, but they have an online redemption process for customers that have eligible connected Iris devices, where they might get a Visa prepaid card back as a form of refund or compensation. So do check out if you are affected by this, do check out the Lowe's website for that. But I think now we can get on to happier topics. 0.87, the first release with Lovelace, Lovelace was the last release, and now we've got, this is the first release after Lovelace, and what's next? And I think the first big thing to come out this release is going to be Areas. So if everyone remembers the State of the Union that Paulus had, Paulus sort of mentioned the idea of areas or rooms in Home Assistant, and being able to assign devices to a room. So you might have a bedroom, you can create that in Home Assistant as an area now, and then you can assign things like your motion sensor, your TV, your speakers, and have them all grouped in that area. So as of 0.87, you can create and assign devices to an area, and then in the future, so not just yet, but in the future, you'll be able to allow areas to be restricted basically to certain users, so bringing in that whole permissions model. So, a guest may not be able to control your bedroom, they can only control their bedroom and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's cool to see areas finally added in.
Yeah, that's actually amazing because now I can say, okay, you know what? Let's say I have a guest over hanging out at my house. They want to hang out. They want to sleep. Great. You know what? Here's the guest bedroom, and your tablet only has access to this specific pieces, right? So, maybe the bedroom, if there's a guest bathroom, or maybe some hallway lights or something like that. But you can't wake me up in the middle of the night by accidentally or intentionally pressing the let's turn on Rohan's bedroom light kind of thing at 3 a.m. and startling me half to death. So that's fantastic. So also now that they do have the entity registry in a UI form. So the configuration panel now basically has the interface where you can see everything that's connected and utilize it that way.
There's also a new system health component, which will allow you, once enabled, you'll be able to go to the information panel, and it's going to basically tell you the health of your Home Assistant install. So it'll give you details like what operating system you're using, if there's any potential issues, all those sort of details. In the future, we're hoping that there'll be the integrations themselves will be able to report their health status. So, for example, if your Philips Hue integration is having some issues, it'll be able to report it via the system health section. So, yeah, that's cool once again to make the platform a bit more stable.
Yeah. Also, something that I'm personally excited about, there's a SmartThings component. So before there was, what is it, like 2 years ago, maybe, or a year and a half ago, there was a blog post saying, here's the SmartThings, which basically had a script within the SmartThings cloud, which connected back to your MQTT. There was in my case, it was another Docker container that I had to spin up to act as a median between SmartThings and Home Assistant, and the Home Assistant picks up from that MQTT server. Now there's actually a native integration. So I've personally been waiting for this for a little bit, and I actually played with it last night, and it works. It's great. A couple of things to know. There are a couple of nuances, so make sure you do read the manual or the components page for the SmartThings, and yeah, try it out if you use it. I love Home Assistant, and before Home Assistant, I was using SmartThings, and I was too lazy to learn Groovy, hence my move to Home Assistant. And now all my Zigbee devices, Z-Wave devices are still connected there, so now I can actually leverage those natively from the SmartThings UI, which I think is awesome.
And you can get rid of that MQTT bridge.
Yeah, exactly. That's one more thing to get rid of. I have other components that are on MQTT. So right now, it's actually only switches that are supported. So I do have door sensors and like contact sensors and things like that, motion sensors that are on SmartThings that are coming in through MQTT. So that is not supported today. So personally, I'll still be running both, but now I can actually remove my switches from MQTT and then run them natively on here. And as the functions come in for motion sensor, contact sensor, things like that, I can actually bring those in as well.
So that uses the cloud though, right? So does the MQTT bridge all run locally? Or does that use the cloud as well?
Bridge, all of that stuff runs locally. Yeah, so there right now, everything runs locally, but there is a component which does call home. I haven't dug into the code, so again, I may be off a little bit, but basically what happens is you publish your external. So one of the caveats here is you need to have your external, whether it's your IP or dynamic DNS or DNS name, published outbound. And it needs to be HTTPS. And I believe it has to be a valid certificate. So you have to use something like Let's Encrypt for that. In my case, I'm using Let's Encrypt behind an Nginx reverse proxy, or alongside our Nginx reverse proxy. So I have my my dynamic I'm using a static DNS name, but I have a DNS name that points back to my IP address with the HTTPS URL, and it works fine. It's actually all laid out in the documentation. It's just don't do what I did and skim down to the bottom and be like, okay, this is the config. Read the actual full config, because I had to try it 2 or 3 times before I actually read the configuration and said, oh, here's actually what I need to do. So
classic developer move.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'll just skip to the bottom. I'll figure out the fill in the blanks. Yeah, no, read it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. In this case, I would suggest it. There's 2 or 3 nuances there that are documented. So
another image processing platform, this time for QR codes. I'm going to be actually really interested to see some use cases for this one. I'm guessing so any camera that can be configured inside Home Assistant now that Home Assistant can see can now have the ability for it to read QR codes from the images. So I reckon there'll be some interesting uses for that. Maybe I'm thinking maybe a form of ID, like walk up with my little ID badge and there's my QR code on it. Not very secure, obviously, but maybe that could unlock something. Or maybe, similar, maybe a DVD cover that has a QR code in the corner, scan that against the camera, and then it starts playing that DVD on the TV. So, very interested to see what people do with that platform.
Yeah. Also, the Everlights light component. So Everlights, if you're not familiar with it, they're permanent Christmas lights that you install on your gutters or flashing, whatever you want to call it, on your home. And basically, you can change the LEDs in a zone to a single color, or you can activate a pattern, things like that. So that has now been integrated into Home Assistant.
That's awesome. Another product I didn't know existed, but now I want. Now the next feature is actually something that I'm really excited to see in Home Assistant, and it's not something that hasn't really been talked about before, but it's called the utility meter. And it's a new platform which aims to improve the ability for Home Assistant to measure the consumption of utilities, for example, your electricity, gas, and water. So, for example, with this utility meter, you could track how much money you're spending on your dishwasher or your washing machine is using. And it even goes to the level of being able to support different like peak energy tariffs and all that. And you can actually set up, my billing cycles each month, each fortnight, or whatever. So this is actually going to be really cool to have. James, I think you'll enjoy having this in one of your Grafana sort of graphs to show, how much money I'm spending here. So yeah, this is a really cool feature to have in Home Assistant.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can think of 1,000 use cases already for that. So
right? Yeah, exactly. So that's a really cool feature.
So there's also going to be a CO2 signal sensor. So basically a sensor that says, here's how much CO2 is being emitted to generate your household electricity. So, for example, if you start charging your electric vehicle, or you can say, let me only start charging my electric vehicle when my country is below a certain threshold. So if you're very green, then here you go. This is for you.
Yeah, that's cool. So it won't know how much your particular house is generating, but it will be able to get the data. Apparently there's services that track how much a country is generating CO2 emissions at any given time. And then it just, you can get that into Home Assistant. Really cool.
Which is great. I didn't realize that this was a thing. Like I knew somebody was measuring it. I just didn't know if it was like publicly available. So that's kind of cool.
It's amazing how people, find this data.
It's true.
If you're a HomeKit user, we now have HomeKit motion sensor devices can now be used inside Home Assistant.
Yep. Also, Recollect Waste Sensor and the Rova Garbage Sensors are now here. So if your local government uses Recollect Waste to give you kind of waste information, then this sensor lets Home Assistant know when your next pickup is and what kind of waste is going to be collected. So, which is pretty cool. Mine personally doesn't use either of these, but it's great to see that that's actually being provided. Yeah. So hopefully one of mine is coming up here soon. So.
All right, breaking changes. Only a couple we'll mention for this release. The transmission sensor and the Devado routers They've been both moved to components now, so you'll need to update your config if you're using any of those.
Also, the material icons that are very popular. So those are all the icons that you see through Home Assistant, like the fans and things like that. They've been updated to a newer version. So and some of the icons have been changed also as part of that.
Yeah, I just need to watch out for that if you're using any custom icons. Yeah. There was a typo in the air quality component C02, which has now been updated to the correct CO2. So if you were using those in your entity IDs, they may not look different to the human eye, but trust me, they will throw errors, so just watch out for that.
Yeah. Some other noteworthy updates. So now there's a verify SSL option added to the REST switches and sensors. So that means you can either ignore the SSL certificate if you need one or use it.
And the dark sky wind speed and wind gust speeds, those sensors, they've been changed to use kilometers per hour instead of meters per second. So unless you're a physicist and you need to know exactly the meters per second, I think that's probably a more easier way of displaying that data.
Yeah.
So, James, I don't even know where to begin, James. Like, your GitHub config is awesome. You've got a really great setup. It's all documented on GitHub. There are links in our show notes if you want to check it out. So, as I mentioned before, your Lovelace UI was featured in the demo of Home Assistant. And by looks of first I just want to ask you, you're running Home Assistant across 3 Raspberry Pis. Is that still accurate?
That was initially how I started my Home Assistant journey. I've just recently moved over to Intel NUC.
Okay.
Nice. And repurposed those Pis elsewhere, so they didn't go to waste. But yeah, I'm now running HA in a Docker container and grown up, I guess, as far as my implementation of the system goes. So.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of using 3 Raspberry Pis for?
Look, I started the same as everyone else. I had a few sensors and started to get addicted to what I can put in there, so I put everything I could in there. The CPU cycle started to struggle.
Right.
And I noticed that I'd walk into a room, do what I needed to do, went to walk out, and then the light would turn on. So I needed to – it was no point in having automations that weren't triggering when you want them. So I needed to make it more snappy.
Yeah.
I had a look at the CPU cycles and went, well, all right, let's give it some help, and added an extra 2 just to be safe. I put Grafana and Influx and my add-ons kind of on one dedicated Pi, and then Node-RED and automations all on the other Pi. And that was obviously a significant improvement on response times for automations. It was chalk and cheese, really. So let the sensors go about their business on a Pi in the background and don't really care about polling it instantly. It's really the automations we want to happen instantly. So
right.
Yeah, I have done basically the same thing. I'm running 2 instances of Home Assistant at the moment, one on a dedicated Acer Revo, like Nettop PC, and everything, like, once again, for Grafana or anything that's like a non-critical automation goes on the secondary Home Assistant install running on my NAS. So
yeah, exactly.
Did you have your 2 Home Assistant installs talking to each ototь using like MQTT or anything?
Yeah, so the first attempt at it, I was using MQTT State Stream and Event Stream.
Yeah.
But I still didn't get the responsiveness that I wanted from it. And I was playing around with Node-RED at the same time, and I thought, let's see. The limitations were I couldn't see any really. So, and then I realized that it could be the conduit between the 3 instances that I wanted. So any states that I needed, I could just pull from each instance and then put them into any flow that I wanted. So that was pretty much how I handled it from there on in.
Interesting. So then Node-RED becomes the brain for your whole system, essentially.
Exactly, yeah. So the states and everything are still fed by the HA machine, but Node-RED does the automation flows for me.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. Because my original thinking when I moved to 2 versions of Home Assistant was that I didn't want one single point of failure in the house. I didn't want, Home Assistant's down, so then nothing works, right? So I wanted to try and move things across. So at least if one instance is down, at least maybe the lights in one room will keep working. But I found, then MQTT becomes that single point of failure. If MQTT is down, then nothing can talk to each other. And so, yeah, still trying to solve that problem. But
Yeah, so I run a MQTT broker with replication so that if my internet is down, I can still run localized MQTT, and then so that if you ever go down or it ever fails, and my backup just runs on a Raspberry Pi. So
perfect. Okay.
if it ever fails, then away you go.
Really, there's replication.
Yep, that's the beauty of MQTT protocol is made for that kind of replication. So I mean, I do automation as a job as well. So lucky enough to work and play with automation, and that's part of what we do as well. If localized or cloud access or internet access goes down, which it tends to do on an agricultural environment, we have a localized instance that is always replicating, and it will take control. And then if local area connection is gone as well, then it's got its last will where it knows what to do in the event of no communication. And then once everything comes back online, they replicate their states and away they go.
Interesting. Okay.
That's awesome. Okay. Here I was thinking that I was on the right track, but clearly I was not. That sounds, really cool.
There's about 1,000 ways to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. That's getting that replicated MQTT has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. It's one of those things that I've just never gotten around to doing it. I've played with a couple of different MQTT servers to be like, oh, maybe this one, maybe that one, and it's work, right? And it's just one more thing to add to the list. So, but that's awesome that you have that working.
Yeah, it's really handy. And I mean, if you're dealing with SD cards, then you pretty much need to back up everything, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, SD cards. Yeah, definitely. So how long have you been using Home Assistant for, James?
I just got my 1 year anniversary for the forum, so it'll be last month, so just over a year now.
That's awesome.
Nice. And were you using anything before then?
Look, my first adventure into home automation probably would have been around 2006.
Okay.
I discovered what was then probably Xbox Media Center and based my first automations around that. So
yes,
back then I had one of the very first Samsung LCD screens. It was a mid-range amp and receiver and pay TV boxes and HDMI matrices and all that kind of stuff that required about 15 different remotes to get everything onto the right source and volume levels and all that kind of stuff. It was a real pain to select that kind of stuff. So I had a baptism of fire and kind of jumped into Event Ghost at the time. To automate the process, depending on the source selected, it would kind of control the TVs and various inputs via 232 and that kind of stuff. And that obviously gave me a taste for it. And then I started using 232 to Ethernet adapters to automate my blinds and irrigation. So I was using Event Ghost as the back end and an application. I can't remember what it was called now. Either Control Home or Roomy or something along those lines. Right. It was pretty clunky. It required lots of tinkering all the time, pretty much on a weekly basis, but that's really no different to now, I guess. It was event-driven, so that there was no real state awareness as well. So if something wasn't in the right state when you went through that flow, it just went pear-shaped as well. So for my work, I travel a lot and worked overseas quite a bit. So from there, I haven't really had any home automation systems set up because I wasn't really in a stable place for too long. But I did buy a Echo and a Samsung SmartThings when I was in the States at one time, pretty early on in their development. Brought them back to Oz and they were pretty much useless. Like we didn't have much support for them at all. And they ended up getting shelved for a while until I discovered HA, to be honest. So
yeah, that's because I have a question here about your SmartThings here. So for those that aren't aware, Samsung SmartThings just came out in Australia last year, and it's only available exclusively in Victoria via one of the automotive clubs. They've got to install it themselves, and otherwise your only option to import SmartThings is to buy it online and get it imported. But because SmartThings is a US based thing and there's a US frequency of Z-Wave, so James, did you bring SmartThings out and then have all your Z-Wave gear not work, or were there any issues using a US frequency in Australia?
I had the thought around, look, the only real smart lock things at the time was Z-Wave or Bluetooth. And look, reading the reviews on the Quicks, it was pretty rubbish by all accords. So
Yeah.
Z-Wave was our only real option. But as you say, the US use frequencies that are used by our carriers here in Australia. So I didn't really want to stop my neighbours from being able to make phone calls and that kind of stuff. So
That's it, right?
SmartThings has just been shelved. I haven't actually used it. It's always plugged in, but it's never been used, to be honest. So
That's fair enough.
But the Echoes are now a central part of my ecosystem.
Yeah, so now, and I'm guessing now that, have you switched over to the Australian version of the Echo, or are you still on the US?
I've got the US version, my original one, and then I've got a bunch of the smaller Echoes around the place, and they speak to me in a slangy Australian accent, so...
It's the worst. Oh, yeah, I'm still...
That's awesome.
I'm not moving to the Australian version just for the accent. That's, yeah, I can't stand it.
That's funny.
Yeah, I do actually prefer the American version.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of UK people can relate. You know, a lot of features that come out to the US version of the Amazon Echo don't make it elsewhere. I think Rohan was saying the other day, Amazon Guard, the Echo Guard feature, which is still US
Echo
only.
Guard,
You don't even have that in Canada yet. So for some reason it does pay to stay on the US version if you can.
Exactly. So it's weird that they didn't do that to you guys though. So for me, when I guess they launched in Canada, they actually flipped my account automatically. I actually never went in and never asked for it to be flipped.
Oh no!
But they actually moved my account to Canada, where I actually lost a couple of channels that I wanted, things like NPR News and BBC.
Yep.
I think NPR. Ended up coming back. Maybe it didn't. I don't remember offhand, but BBC I still don't have or whatever. So, a couple of those kind of things, right? To say, hey, you know what? We don't have that necessarily here, but it's there, and it still hasn't caught up fully to me. So,
I think it's some pretty cool things that have just been released on their last sort of release cycle as well. Like the Amazon Auto looks pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to get hands on that, but I can't see how long that'll take to come to Australia. So
yeah, for the car. Yeah, all those things again all that hardware is US only, right? So
yeah, that's a problem.
Same deal.
Yeah.
I also want the Echo Clock.
Yeah, I believe that's US also, US only also, and the microwave. Not that I really want. An Echo built into my microwave for, how much ever extra dollars. So I'd rather not.
So how many people are in your smart home, James?
So it's my wife and two young boys. It's a constant battle, I think, with my wife and the approval factor. She's on board when it works, and when it's not, it's pretty brutal. So everything has to meet the wife approval factor, but she is on board with some of the automations, and when they're not working, you know that she's enjoying it because she'll make comments when they don't work. So, but I think for the most part, like I used it to annoy her as well. So text to speech, every message was aimed at her to torment her about she's either left the washing in the machine again, or if she goes to put the alarm on and then has to come back inside, I'll say, "What did you forget this time?" Or like every little process that happens in the house is aimed to have a little jibe at the same time. So yeah, I probably was my worst enemy with that as well.
Yeah. I was going to say that probably didn't help things.
No.
How do the boys find it?
The boys, they're pretty young still, so there's not a lot of automations that really work for them yet. They love the Echo and obviously the Simon Says functionality that doesn't get old with them at all. So I've learned to turn the TV on and the air conditioners and the fans and all that kind of stuff. So not bad for 4 and 2.
It'd be interesting. It's, once again, like these kids are growing up not knowing that this technology never existed. So it's interesting to see how they will grow up knowing with this technology and be able to use it more than what we'll ever be able to achieve.
Oh man, I have to turn the light switch on with my hand. Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, what's that? What decade do we live in, Dad?
But yeah, I mean, on that, the boys when their toddlers get to a certain age, they can read the light switches. They flick them on and off and on and off. And I've got the Xiaomi bulbs, and it resets them if you do it.
Of course it does.
So, yeah. So I've had a few lighting automations not go ahead because of toddler playing.
That's something.
And then of course we have in-laws that are based overseas, and they come to visit probably 2 to 3 months a year. And so the guest mode obviously is another automation that's used for the people in our house. Pretty much we turn everything off because no good with it.
So how do you go about developing a guest mode? So I've tried to do guest mode, but I guess I've never tested it in production. And so then when a guest comes to stay and I just flick that on, it never works, right? So do you have a process that you would go and to test it, or do you just shut all the automations off and hope for the best?
Yeah, so I use a RFID for entry for the guest mode so that they don't have to use a key and all that kind of stuff. And so that kind of triggers a lot of guest mode stuff for them.
Oh, that's really cool.
And they use the same tag in their room, and that stops the lighting turning off because they obviously will want to read at night when normally if there's no motion detected by any of the motion sensors upstairs, all the lights get switched off and that kind of stuff. So, and the bathroom automations. don't want lights going off while people are in the bathtub and that sort of thing. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. The guest ones are always a little tough, right? I tried to keep mine as simple as possible. I literally have a Boolean switch to say guest mode on or off, and if it's on, it literally just, when I say goodnight or whatever, it just doesn't turn off their lights.
Yeah, that's
right?
it.
And, it's about how you can keep it easy, right? So how are you running Home Assistant today? Are you doing Has.io, or are you doing Docker containers? Are you?
Yeah, so just recently, I think November it was, I moved to Intel Nook. I wanted to have a bit more grunt, and because I wanted to start moving on to facial recognition. And in November, I had my first SD card failure.
Of course you did.
And I thought, this is going to get a bit nasty when I'm starting to maintain 3 Pis and 3 SD cards. And I thought, now's the time. Let's get into it. So I reached out to a few people that had done it on the forums before, and how good's our community? They were more than happy to ease my concerns about it. I'd never really worked with Linux. I'm not a Linux man. Sure. And Docker either. So this was another new venture for me. Once I got into it, I ordered the gear the next day, had it up and running within an hour of everything. Yeah. So I still run SIO in a Docker in, Ubuntu server.
Yeah.
And I've spun up a couple other Dockers for Node-RED and MQTT and a few other nice to haves. Portain is pretty awesome for managing that whole environment. And now I run Machinebox on that as well, so that feeds into facial recognition for the door and the bathroom as well, which I'll probably elaborate on a little bit later.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now I'm curious. So facial recognition, what are you doing with it, and specifically in the bathroom too? I don't know if I necessarily want to know the answer to that, but what's
okay. So
what's the story there?
There's a whole privacy issue there, and that's where guest mode comes in as well. So it switches all that off because we don't want to be taking pictures of people in the bathroom when there's no consent and all that kind of stuff. So basically, it was, how do I tackle bathroom automation? So there's 2, I think, white unicorns in home automation. One being presence detection and how to get that right, and the other one,
totally agree.
Bathroom automation. Don't go there unless you're going to get it right. So the first time I attempted it, it was motion detection and then a timeout on that motion detection. So the problem with that being, if you're in the shower or the bathtub, you don't actually trigger the motion sensor in the bathroom. So lights would go out when people were in the bath or in the shower, and that's not ideal. So you get screamed at and rip all this crap out of the house kind of stuff happens. So I thought, how am I going to know someone is in the shower? I had some Xiaomi flood sensors, and I thought, oh no, the shower water sits in the bottom of the shower basin for too long. So the lights would stay on for half a day by the time it dried out. And then I had a look at some of the sensors I already had in the bathroom, put them into Grafana and kind of tried to see any trends that I had from that. And I did notice that whenever we jumped in the shower, the humidity would spike. So I used that as a condition. If humidity is above X amount, don't turn off the lights. And that's been working flawlessly since we implemented that. However, the humidity doesn't spike when the kids are in the bathtub. So the lights were still turning off during bath time for the boys. So one thing you can guarantee when boys are in the bathtub is the noise spike. So we use the noise condition to stop the lights turning off on that one. But I wanted to take it a step further, and this is still a work in progress for the place at the moment. So I've got a magic mirror in the bathroom, and behind that is a little Raspberry with a camera. And when someone comes into the bathroom, with Machinebox, you train it with 100 or so photos of that particular person so it can identify them. So my wife and I are in there as well as the boys. If it recognizes us, it will give you a greeting over the text-to-speech as well as put a little message over the mirror saying welcome or good morning or whatever the time might be. And then it gives you kind of a series prompt type situation where would you like to hear your morning or evening routines? And those routines are simple weather and traffic kind of conditions depending on the mode of transport that we'll be using at that time of the day, the next bus schedule and that kind of thing. And then it will show those, sort of display those on the magic mirror as well. And then the next part of the process is to ask you if you would like to listen to your playlist on Spotify, basically. So you can check a playlist on and away you go to have a shower.
So sorry, I apologize if I missed it. How is that input happening with the mirror? Like, is it like touch or is it voice or is it, like app?
There's two inputs. You can respond via voice.
That's awesome.
So would you like to hear your morning brief? And then a simple yes will be enough to trigger that. Or there's a touch screen on the mirror as well, so you can hit the prompts on the screen.
Very cool. Okay.
So it crashes a little bit, so we're not quite there yet, but that's a pretty cool project and probably one of the little pet projects that I'm happy with at the moment. So.
Very cool. Just again, now I'm just super intrigued. This is going way off, kind of on a tangent. But like even cleaning the mirror and stuff, do you find that's a problem? Because I know most of the stuff is behind the mirror, and that's fine. But with touchscreen, I'm guessing there's some kind of digitizer.
Yeah, so there is a digitizer, and there's a little push button switch under the kind of right hand bottom corner that you can click to turn that off as well.
Interesting. Okay, so if you're doing any cleaning or anything, you do that, and that way it doesn't affect anything, and you don't damage it.
Exactly, okay. And because the boys are always spitting toothpaste or touching it.
Yeah.
So it needs cleaning all the time.
That's funny.
And plus, we don't want them to touch it all the time as well, so it gets turned off as well.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's interesting because you mentioned the Xiaomi flood sensors for the shower, and this is another problem that every house is different. So I'm actually using a Xiaomi flood sensor in our shower to detect when someone's in there, because here the water doesn't pool under and just dry straight away. And I found that the humidity...
Cool, and that works well for you?
Exactly, yeah. I found the Xiaomi sensor, when it's just the Xiaomi sensor on the floor, it will actually trap the water underneath it because it's got a nice seal under the sensor. So what I did is I put a little bit of blue tack underneath it to raise it just a very tiny little bit to let the water dry out from underneath it. And that's enough to... within a couple of minutes of the shower turning off, the Xiaomi sensor reports that there's no water there and away Home Assistant goes. But so for me, I found the Xiaomi sensor fine, but I didn't find the humidity fine because we always have the exhaust fan on. So, yeah.
Well, with us, with the boys as well, if it's not nailed down, they'll take it and play with it and throw it around. So we've got to be a bit smarter about how we can't just place things where we want, unfortunately.
Yeah, so. Design considerations.
Yeah, I have a friend, and when her 3-year-old daughter comes around, the first thing she does is she runs into the kitchen and yanks off my door sensor that's attached to the dishwasher because it's right within her eye level. And of course, there goes that door sensor. so I can't tell when the dishwasher's clean or not.
So I put all the temperature and humidity sensors right above the light switch. But the boys have grown and they've started ripping them off. And, of course, they've got little batteries in them, so we need to be conscious of that. So I had to redeploy them all above the door frames at the top of the door and that kind of stuff as well. So it's different obstacles every day.
And this is the thing, right? Every house is unique.
Yeah, it's just but how good are Xiaomi sensors?
Oh, they are awesome. I'm a really big fan of those.
I didn't realize at the time. So I started with the typical, like everyone did, with sign-offs in the wall, and I kept reading on the forums about Xiaomi and Xiaomi gateways, and I thought, okay, what is this? Everyone seems to be looking at them. And I didn't realize at the time that was a rabbit hole that I was never going to get out of. And so, I'm a massive fanboy, right? I've got just about everything. They've got 2,000 items in their catalog, but I'm doing my best to get my way through it. I've got all of their home automation type sensors, but I use heaps of stuff that isn't even related to my smart home either. Like we've got juicers and hair dryers and all kinds of stuff. So.
Oh, really?
That's
wow,
funny.
You've gone full Xiaomi. That's awesome.
Yeah, the scooter's my favorite, I have to say.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think you're allowed to. I'm not allowed to have those in Victoria. They're too fast. For whatever reason, they're too powerful.
Technically not allowed here either. But have you been to the Gold Coast on schoolies?
Yeah, that's fair enough. They don't really listen up there, do they? They just do what you want.
Scooters everywhere. So.
I saw on your GitHub repo you're also using the Xiaomi pedestal fan, which I think is going to eventually replace my cheap $30 remote control supermarket fan. How have you found that?
It's awesome. So when I first bought it, I don't think anyone else had one, and it was not integrated into HA. So I was kind of disappointed and went, oh, well, I can still – the app itself on the phone is actually pretty good. Reached out to community. I can't remember who it was that helped me now, but they had a custom component ready for me in about 6 hours.
That's awesome.
Which gave me 90% functionality. And I pretty much use it in summer. I use it every day. So 9 months of the year it gets used. Yeah, summers go for about 9 months up here. But I use it every night in the kitchen, and then I bring it into the bedroom and use the ceiling fan as well as that. And I put it on timers and that kind of stuff as well. And it's got all these other different modes on it that if it's not completely humid, then you can have it on full ball. If it is, then it's got this like I remember what the mode's called, like an articulating type style. It's pretty good as well, so you don't have
so it just like sort of speeds up and then slows down. That's cool.
Yeah, it speeds up and slows down, and it's pretty good.
That's nice.
So what are you using? So you mentioned before you've got your RFID tags. Are they your main form of presence detection?
I don't use them at all for presence except for guest mode.
Okay.
As I said before, like presence detection, that's taken me a long time to get right. I started with own tracks like everyone. I watched Bra's video on it. We all know its limitations, and it basically can't be relied upon by itself alone. So I went full stalker mode with my family and used a combination of GPS tracking, Bluetooth trackers, ping and all kinds of stuff, feed them into Bayesian sensors, and then use Node-RED to determine how accurately the chance of us being at home is. And that's been working. I removed own tracks because anytime Android updates, it pretty much stops working. iPhone, it doesn't work at all. I moved to GPS tracker, and that's been pretty good. I haven't had any issues with that at all, so really happy with that one. In fact, I could probably use that by itself.
Nice. And how do you find like tracking your children? Do they have phones themselves that you can track with, or do you have other sensors that you can use to track them?
No. Like we try to limit screen time with them and all that kind of good stuff. So at the moment, and they're not at school age or anything like that yet. So, and they're loud, man. So we pretty much know where they are all the time. No real. I could use sound sensors to kind of determine what room they're in, but it would show up in all rooms anyway, I think, with how loud they are. So we don't do that. It's mainly for my wife catches a lot of buses and public transport and that kind of stuff. So I like to know if she should be somewhere and she isn't. I can get sort of an automation run by that. Or if her phone's run dead, I can get an alert and that kind of stuff from that as well. But having the alarm set and not set with a incomplete presence detection is just not possible. And then you've got lights turning off on you and all that kind of stuff in the middle of dinner. And so I really couldn't crack it until I moved to Node-RED. And then from there, it's using the probabilities from a Bayesian sensor and feeding that into sort of different flows with, if this is the case, then that's good possibility I'll know. And then I've taken it a step further to say what room we're actually in as well. So using pi zeros around the house to kind of determine where our phone's at, as well as motion sensors. And then, things that you're probably already doing, Phil, with
exactly.
If the TV's on at a certain time, then it's a pretty good idea that you're in the lounge room. And if the bed sensors are triggered, then we're in bed. And using, the new vibration sensors from Xiaomi, I use one of them under one of my office chairs to tell if I'm in the office or in the study, and that in conjunction with a motion sensor will turn my lamp on, all that kind of stuff.
Wow, very cool. So what are some of your out of all of your automation? So it sounds like you're doing quite a bit. Out of all of that stuff, what's among your favorites?
Look, I'd probably be lying if I didn't say I don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling every time an automation fires. It's a pretty cool little feeling to know that you've set something in motion and it's just working.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I secretly like it when they don't, so I can kind of get under the hood and have a bit of a play as well. So
that's fair.
Yeah, it's an excuse to have a play. But look, I'm a creature of habit, so I'm probably a perfect candidate for automating my life. One of my favorites, I guess, is my evening routine. So once the chaos of feeding time is complete, I do the dishes. And so I have a flow sensor installed on my faucet or my tap, and as well the sink pipe underneath. So if there's flow out of the tap, and the boys wash their hands in the sink a lot as well, so I had to install one in the pipe underneath the sink as well, sort of to determine if there's water flowing. But if the plug's in, it's obviously not flowing out of the pipe at the bottom. So that's a good indication that I'm about to do the dishes. If that's the case, that kind of sets the flow in motion. From there, that triggers my evening routine. So it'll open up the blinds so I can see my backyard as the sun's going down. It uses a script and tasker to turn on kitchen tablet, opens Spotify up and makes it full screen and plays a playlist. It turns on the Xiaomi fan if it's hot, because it's a little pokey kitchen. So if the oven's been on most of the time, it has been just after dinner, it's pretty unbearable in there, and then you've got hot water from the sink. So I have the fan going, and then once I've emptied the sink, that's the condition to start the next part of the flow, and that will close the blind again and turn the music off. And then when I come to after that, I empty the trash, and I've got a Wi-Fi enabled gas actuator on the front door. I'm getting pretty lazy now.
Joking.
So I walk up with I've usually got two trash bags, the recycle and the normal trash. Yeah. So my hands are full. It opens the door for me. I walk out, and then the lights light my way around from the front of the house around the side. So just having that light turn on without the light switch is pretty awesome.
Yeah, next time you're in Toronto, man, I got to get you up to my place and being like, just book yourself for like a week and just go ham.
Yeah, a bit of my work life is trickling into my home life, unfortunately. So
a Wi-Fi gas actuator? I didn't even know they made that.
Yeah.
So I automate farming processes and stuff. So they don't actually. I've designed one at work myself for that purpose. So I was testing something out on an actuated measurement sensor for a wine vat, and I thought, hey, this could open my door. So there's 1,000 use for any one particular sensor, and that's my wife thought that was a lot overboard, which it probably is. But
that is one of the best things I've ever heard. I can just imagine the door opening. How long does it take to open? Like, is it just a sensor?
It's pretty good, but it's a like a action fired
Yep.
actuator, so it'll open quickly, and then kind of like the gas operated kitchen drawers and stuff. It'll open, and then it gets to a certain point,
Yep,
and then
yep.
slow up, so that it doesn't slam open,
Yeah.
like fly open and hit someone if they're trying to come in the door or something like that. But that only actually fires that one only actually at the moment is works when I trigger this script. Most of the time, it's just a manually
that's fair
operated
enough.
door. So
Right. Okay.
Wow.
because we don't want the kids being able to get out to front when they can just wave their hand and
Yes, I
open the
can
door.
imagine.
So
That's good idea.
So that one, like having to turn on the tablet, open Spotify, pick the playlist, that kind of stuff. I was like, geez, there's got to be a better way. So that kind of sparked this whole, all right, what else do I do as part of my routine? And that just escalated.
Wow, that's awesome.
A better question to have asked you would be, what haven't you automated in your house yet?
Yeah.
I continually search and I troll the forums for good ideas as well. So I have a bunch of stuff still sitting in my garage ready to be deployed, and when I get a bit of time, I'll have a bit of a play and tinker. But the main projects I'm working on at the moment is the bathroom magic mirror project, obviously, that we talked about before. I'm working on an agronomist type weather station, but that's more of for people that have their own weather stations, like a Davis or a personal weather station in their own backyard. Kind of display all that information you would see, but it will take it to the next level. So bring in some Delta T for spraying and watering conditions, and bring some high level mass into it to give people that next kind of level of this is what we're doing in the wider. This is what automation is doing in industry. Let's bring it into Home Assistant as well.
Wow.
So what would be the brains that are powering that? Is that Grafana, or is it like that's powering the brains for that, or is there another system that...
It's a little bit of both. So Lovelace, I mean, how good is it? So it's got some really good applications of just the standard cards, but then what you can customize when you get under the hood of it is as well is pretty awesome. So I'm using a bunch of standard cards, some picture entity cards to put sensors in there as well. Then I have some pretty cool graphs that have been done in Grafana, and then I'm using an iframe to bring them in. Eventually, hopefully, we can get that as part of the standard Home Assistant.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Platform, right? So have Grafana as a component, reach out via API, and then you can use it as a standard Lovelace card, hopefully. So I think now that we've got the basis of a pretty solid platform for Lovelace, we're going to see some cool stuff coming in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think especially now that everybody's kind of cemented onto Lovelace also, I think that helps. And then now that way the developers have, okay, we've got this core, now let's start building on top of it, right? So, it's fantastic just looking at some of that stuff. So
yeah, and obviously, as you touched on earlier, Phil, they used some of my examples in the Lovelace UI website, which is pretty awesome. But a lot of it didn't make it in because it's too custom. So Paulus wanted to keep it as user friendly as possible, and the way some of those cards are implemented is probably going to scare a lot of new users away. So we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. But I'm doing a simplified version of my Lovelace for that demo, and then I'm also working on some other Lovelace stuff that'll be released to the community in the next couple of weeks. So,
that's awesome. Well, we're going to look forward to that.
yeah, exactly. That's amazing.
Even just your slimmed down version was amazing. Like, I was like, I need to use that card, and then I look, okay, how do I get this into my Lovelace? It's like, so many cool ideas.
Yeah, and the community is coming up with new ones every day. So
yeah, awesome.
Look, I could talk for a week about everything that I would love to do and everything I have done. So, look, I think that we've had a pretty good podcast so far. So I'll leave it there, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to chat about some more stuff further down the track.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've got so much still working on. So if you've automated your gas opening door, there's got to be a million things you're going to have that I want to know about soon.
Yeah, look, there's been some requests for me to send photos from my house, and I'll probably aim to add a few little videos about some automations in action. One of the ones I just did before the podcast today was we bought the boys some, I don't know if you've seen the Marvel light up masks you can put on the wall. And the Spider-Man one, the eyes and the face light up, and the web on his fists or his hand light up. We've got a bit of a playroom, superhero themed playroom for them. So we put them up, but they operate on a little switch. So I thought, oh, let's automate it. So I cracked them open, had a look, put a little Wemos D1 in there, and now they will switch on when we walk into the room, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool. Or motion sensor, I'm guessing.
So we use the motion sensor from the playroom, and they'll switch on. There's also a little PIR sensor in them so that the boys can wave their hands in front of them and they'll light up as well.
That's awesome.
We'll get some sounds and all that kind of stuff added eventually, but...
Wow.
That's amazing.
See? There's another idea straight away. Just add things in.
Yeah. Now I have the boys asking me to automate stuff as well, so...
Well, now you're going to have a support queue inside.
You need to open up a Jira just for your house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Kids start filing tickets.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, we'll leave links to your awesome GitHub repo in the show notes. Thank you very much, James, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.